So, I'm now 22. I started dating my now ex when I was 17, I think. So this year marks year 5 that we had been together. The first 2 years started off great, but there was always some kind of red flag with him. He never wanted to walk me inside, never wanted to see my parents or spend time with my family. But I was always the one doing that. He also always judges my makeup, asks me why I'm not wearing any when I don't have it on, even when I'm sick. Makes me feel insecure and less confident, and judges my looks, hair, clothes, everything, and always seemed to make excuses for everything, but whatever. But it started getting to the point where he argued with me over everything, was sensitive about everything. He was mentally, emotionally, and verbally abusive. He never apologized for anything unless I basically forced him to, and he'd always walk away and run out and drive home if we'd get in arguments and I'd ask to work them out. So I kind of gave up. I lost a lot of my feelings for him. He showed me he didn't really care and didn't seem like he loved me much or took me seriously. So I had been working at this job that was all a younger crew for a while. Well, it was 2 weeks before I was supposed to travel to a foreign country, where he's from, with his family for Christmas. I had bought my own ticket, mind you, $1,700 of my own money, which was hard to make at that age. I had kind of been done with the relationship. I warned him too that if he didn't want to take me seriously, I'd be done. And if he kept walking off like he was doing instead of working things out, I'd be done. I told myself that I wanted a break from him, and that if I could survive without him for a week and not feel much pain or hurt, that I could just end things and be fine and eventually move on. Remember, this was 2 weeks before travel date. I had also told myself I was returning my ticket and not going. So I tell him I want a break, and fair enough, I did tell him not to talk to girls, but who am I kidding? I was over him anyways. And of course, right when I wanted to take a break, he gets all scared and doesn't want a break because we don't need that, and he's sorry and bullshit. Also would like to mention that I had planned on leaving him at the end of this break if I did okay without him. And he knew I was pretty much done with the relationship, and that there was a big possibility I wasn't going to go on that trip, which is why he decided to act like he cared when I wanted the break. But I wanted it, so we took the break. And, well, I fucked up. Towards the end of this week break, I had sex with this guy from my job. It was one time only, and honestly instantly regretted it. I wanted to cry the whole time, and I just felt awful and so guilty, and I know I should have stopped myself before doing anything, but I was too stupid and didn't think about the consequences. But I regretted it right away and knew it was wrong. And honestly, ironically enough, it made me miss my BF even more. It made me want to work things out and just love each other and just be happy together. I know that sounds wrong, that it took me doing what I did to realize that. But I didn't tell him about it, and I just thought if I swept it under the rug, I could just pretend like it didn't happen. I never did anything with any guy after that. Didn't even talk flirty with anyone or anything. I made a bad mistake once and learned and never did it again. And never will. For 2.5 years that I didn't tell him, it fucking ate me up inside. I felt so guilty. I cried every day. I prayed for forgiveness. I couldn't sleep. I beat myself up every day. How could you do this to him? How could you be so disgusting? How could you go against your own morals? I was embarrassed and mortified. I never did it again. But it was horrible. The guilt I was left with. Do I tell him? Do I not? Well, I had to. I would have rather tell him now than have him hear from someone else, right? Well, even after I didn't tell him, our relationship was still toxic. But I told him, and boy, shit blew up. He was hurt. Understandably. I tried to explain my point of view and where I was coming from. Never once made any excuses, of course, because there is not excuse for that. I asked for his forgiveness and that we try to work through things. He didn't want to talk to me for a week, then agrees to try to make things work, and I understood that he'd be angry at first. Well, it was more than anger. I dealt with so much abuse for the past few months. I tried to start by making it up to him. The first couple months, I went to his house every day for those couple months straight. He lives 30 minutes away from me and I'm young, in full-time 40-hour-a-week school and not working. He called me every name in the book, slut-shamed me like it was nothing, treated me the worst of the worst, has literally called me a fucking stupid cunt so many times and fucking dumb bitch and all, and thought it was funny when I asked him to apologize. He knew that was the one thing I asked him not to do, and he started to manipulate me and do it. He says it's the same thing if I called him an asshole or a dick or prick. Thoughts? And at one point, looked at me while I cried so hard and said, "I don't fucking love you. I don't fucking care about you. Get the fuck out of my life." So, I left him, and he regretted treating me like that, and begged me for another chance. And I told him I didn't want to because he was never going to forgive me, was always going to treat me like shit, and IDK just felt like he didn't love me. And also on top of that, I found out he reached out to his ex from Cali. He used to live there, currently in TX, the week that he found everything out, and he knows that would make me so angry. She makes me insecure because she's 10x prettier than me, has a hot bod, and is just everything that he wants. It pissed me off because of all people to reach out to during his most vulnerable time. He reaches out to her. He claimed they were friends too when I asked him to block her, and he wouldn't do it because he wasn't going to be controlled like that. I think that's bullshit. And I found out he had made a Tinder 4 times. 4! Each time we'd break up even though we had done that many times before, and it literally lasted a day, and we worked things out. He knew we were gonna work things out and made it anyways. 4 times. In less than 24 hours of breaking up, one time 10 minutes after, and the first time I found out, it was through a friend. I confronted him about it, and he was totally embarrassed, and honestly I know in my gut, had I not caught him, he probably would have kept going. I gave him the chance. I knew that feeling of desperation because that was me when I told him what I had done. But at the same time, I think I had emotionally detached myself already at this point, so I wouldn't feel so hurt. But I gave him the chance. But eventually he went right back to being so shitty to me. To be fair, I was being a bitch. I was mad that he thinks he has a right now because of what I did. He's always so mean and calls me a fucking disgusting cheater and tells me to go fuck the guy that I did when I made a bad choice. And I was fucking mad. And yeah, I'd treat him like shit too. I regret that though because I love him. And you know, my ex was supposedly super Christian, though he didn't practice what he preached. His mom knew and I talked with her and she was very forgiving. She understood and told me that good people make bad choices, and that doesn't make them bad people. She kept telling him to give me another chance, and he just didn't care what anyone said because he was too hurt. Well, recently, we ended things because he was just too hurt by what I did. It makes me angry because of the time he begged for me. I told him why I was reluctant, also because the Tinder stuff made me uncomfortable. Kinda left a bad taste in my mouth, but I thought I deserved that. But then again, 4 times. Anyways, yeah, I kept asking him if we could just start fresh and just try to be kind and loving and caring and just be nice and try to work things out, and he's just not going to do that. He claims he already gave me my chances, even though, for me, I was never really given a fair chance since his anger and hurt was always in the way, and he could never see the things I was doing to try. And then I started getting frustrated and angry with how he was treating me, so of course I'd lash out. So that's why I wanted a fresh start. He refuses therapy, refuses everything, and now apparently seems to refuse me. I know he's already made multiple dating app accounts, which hurts because it shows how easily he can move on, and I still never did that. I made my mistake and learned and never again. He did that 4 times and it makes me sad. But I'd be willing to have a fresh start. I'd also like to mention, I was a very supportive, loving, and caring girlfriend. I always spent my time with his family. I went to church every Sunday for 4.5 years straight. I'm not even that religious. And I was there during his most vulnerable times. He was recently diagnosed with severe scoliosis and sciatica, which he blames me for because of all the stress, even though the doctor said that's not what caused it. And on top of that, his mom was diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer that's aggressive and rare, and this was a couple months after his diagnosis. Yeah, well, I recently got diagnosed with preclinical lupus, and he's watched me struggle with my severe symptoms starting from the first couple months of our relationship, and he left me right around the time when he found out. I needed him, and he was nowhere to be found. He claims I never loved him or cared, and that I was never supportive. Ironically enough, I was always there and loved him and cared and supported him, and he abandoned me when I really needed him. I know this was all over the place, I'm sorry. And I'm not asking for sympathy. I know I fucked up and he knows how sorry I am, and loves to manipulate me because of it. My question, if you were him, what would you do? Would you try to work things out? Would you be willing to start fresh? Would you forgive me? I know you can't forget. But to not forgive, that's something else. He knows how much I love him. That's why this hurts. Next story, story 2. I made a huge mistake and now I'm caught in such a fucked yo situation I don't know what to do anymore. I just want advice. But if you're mean, I understand I made a huge mistake. This is a long story. Me, 23F, and my husband, 26M, have been married for around 3 months, but we've been together ever since my sophomore year of high school, his senior year. We have done everything together. When he went to college, we made sure that I would go to the same school. He even turned down a better scholarship to go to a school that I had a better chance of getting into, since he was one of the smart kids, and I was one of the more average kids. And when he finished, he immediately started working so that he could support us, and I drop out because he knew I hated school. He works as a software engineer right now, leaving company unnamed, obviously. Sorry for the long background, but I just wanted to show that I do love him with everything in my being, and everything he's done for me, and I wouldn't give him up for anything. I stay at home and take care of the typical cleaning and cooking and house maintenance, so we have a good relationship, and we both put in a lot of work to make sure things stay afloat. Before I get into this, I should say that my physical attraction to him wasn't the same as when we were in college. Ever since he started working, he started to work out less and doesn't come to the gym with me as often. He's not fat or anything, but it's obvious. He doesn't have as much muscle, and the things he had early in college, like his six-pack, which he knows I used to love, are long gone. Maybe less working out reduced his testosterone also because the sex isn't as frequent, and when we have it, it's not like it used to be. Starting a couple of months ago, one of his better friends that I will call David started coming over to hang out. Usually I don't like his friends in our place so frequently, but me and David instantly clicked. David and I hit it off, and my husband was so happy to see that I finally got along with his friends. But then, as usual, he ended up going back to work and spending less and less time with me, which honestly might have been one of the reasons I cheated. When we were about to get married, he promised me we wouldn't fall out of touch like in the movies, and that he wouldn't abandon me for work. But that's exactly what I feel like happened. David started swinging by a couple of hours before my husband got home to wait for him comfortably, so we started hanging out. We did everything together that I felt like my husband should have taken the time to do with me. We binged Netflix, talked about SOO much, went out to movies. Whenever people saw us, they said I looked happier, and at that point I think you was. David started swinging by to hang out with me more than my husband, so he came earlier and earlier, and soon it was just at the beginning of the day. As long as he didn't have class, he's working on his master's. One morning when he came by and we started to binge Netflix, I didn't have as much clothes on as usually because he came at like 9, which was slightly earlier than expected, but I was already so comfortable with him it didn't matter. I only had a big shirt on and some underwear, and I didn't even realize until it was too late that I wasn't wearing a bra, so I felt awkward. Then David, as a joke, took off his clothes and only had a shirt and his boxers, and climbed into bed next to me saying it was undies time, and he was abnormally close, but I ended up moving in even closer. He put his hand on my thigh, and I ended up moving to sit in between his legs, and before I even thought about it, he turned me around and he started grinding an erection onto me, and I kissed him. I didn't intend for it to go further than that, but he was everything that my husband wasn't anymore. He was still built, and I could tell he really wanted me more than my own husband had, so we ended up having sex. I trusted him, of course, so we never used protection. Throughout that day, and he gave me the opportunity to feel ways and do things I hadn't done in so long. I thought I would feel bad right after, but I didn't. I was only really excited that I was desired and wanted and satisfied again. Me and David continued this relationship for months, and I ended up giving him the nickname Hubby because I really felt like he was my true husband the way he treated me. But of course, he started to get possessive like men do, and this is where the huge problems began. Whenever we had sex, he wanted my wedding ring off, and I ended up losing it, and my husband immediately noticed because I made a point of never having it off. But that was only the first thing. David told me to stop kissing my husband or really treating him like he was my husband at all, and I did it, and I treated my husband like shit because he manipulated me into believing he was a shitty husband in person for leaving me so alone. I went back on birth control, and we never used protection because he didn't like it, and I never objected because I just enjoyed the feeling of being taken again. I stopped kissing my husband. I put as much distance between us in bed as possible, and I made a point to never have sex with him no matter what. I called him fat and ugly when I got angry or was upset, and it just sent my marriage into ruins. David was still around, and I guess my husband realized how lovey-dovey I was with David because he started making accusations, and of course David got possessive again. So when my husband told him he couldn't come over anymore, he sent my husband months' worth of the pictures and videos and messages we had made and sent each other as some kind of sick payback. When my husband got home, he was infuriated, and he screamed and threw things, and I had no idea what to do. And I realized that David didn't really care about me as much as my husband did if he was willing to expose me like that. He started yelling about how hard he was working, as if I didn't help around the house, and he broke a lot of my personal items. He was crying in the corner and talking about how he wanted to kill himself, and I was so scared because he randomly kept lashing out again. He kept asking me questions, half yelling, half crying about how often and how long it had been going on, and I broke down and started crying too, and told him everything. He looked at the videos on his phone, getting angry again, because I told David I loved him, and that he was better than my husband, and other things that insulted him. In the videos, he saw that we were having sex in our marital bed, and that we never used a condom, and he always finished inside me, and I could see something in him just break, maybe, because he was my first time back in high school, and I didn't let him do any of that until we were married. He kept scratching at his skin and harming himself in weird ways, and insulting himself like I would insult him when I got angry, and I was scared he was going insane. Thankfully, the neighbors called the police due to the yelling, although they took his side a little more than mine, and they asked me if I had somewhere else to stay, so I don't know if they hospitalized him or not. Now I live with my mother and am working part-time again. I regret everything. Though I still haven't been able to quite distance myself from David, because I think he really started to care for me once my husband tossed me aside and he's been here for me. David calls me wifey now, and it hurts because I really just want my husband back. We haven't gotten officially divorced, but he won't talk to me or return my messages or anything at all. If I send a third party there, he just tells them to tell me to get a lawyer because he wants to divorce me. I don't know if I'll do well in the divorce since he paid for everything, and because of David, he has a mountain of evidence on me cheating. I really just want this all to be done and over. What can I do to get him back? And if I don't, how will I do in a divorce? Update. After writing this post, I was able to get into contact with my husband's sister, and apparently he's not doing very well mentally. Apparently he hasn't been eating and has lost a ton of weight. She said all he does is work and sleep and maybe eat every other day. She said I also did nearly unfixable damage to his confidence, because now he's afraid to go out in public because he thinks people will see him as a joke. Honestly, I don't see how his mental condition is my fault. It's his response and his choice to do what he's doing. She still wants me to sign the papers and is threatening me with the evidence that was sent to him by David. I'm going to hold off on any attempt to get him back until I can assure that Hez not going to do anything drastic, like on the night he found out. Next story, story 3. It was 1978. Yeah, I'm that old. Before the internet or cell phones, porn was found in Penthouse or Hustler magazines or occasionally a black and white stag film. I was 20, a 6 of 4 inches redhead with a 7.75 inches cut dick. I'd been with several girls before I met my future wife, Kay. She was gorgeous with straight, long blonde hair, a great firm butt, a slim waist, and very ample breasts. We met at a house party where someone's parents were out of town, so we had the whole house. There was lots of cheap wine, PJ, and weed. Kay and I hit it off and were quickly making out. I had my hand under her peasant blouse, cupping those perfect tits. She was rubbing my jeans, and seeing my reaction, she whispered that we should go upstairs. I was in heaven. This was straight out of a Penthouse letter. I followed her up to an open room. We sat and kissed while undressing each other. I moved to kiss those fabulous tits as she stroked me. I pulled off her tight jeans and leaned in to kiss around her neatly trimmed bush. Playfully pushing me on my back and straddling my hips, she whispered, "Fuck me." I hurriedly fumbled with the condom. She smiled, rolled it down, and guided me to her pussy. It was amazing. The sex was great, but way too rushed because people kept knocking, wanting the room. We both climaxed around the same time and lay hugging for a rest. More knocking at the door, and we dressed to return downstairs. We had a lot in common, and she was smart and fun. We dated every few days when she was free. Hot date, more like we had sex every chance we got. Note, I had built a bed and curtains in my VW bus. For camping, I told my parents. LOL. We experimented, often with her suggesting ways to make her get off. I didn't question her carnal knowledge. I just thought it was a girl thing. We started dating steadily shortly after. Her parents didn't like me at first. Some skinny, long-haired guy was dating their precious daughter. I remember watching TV at her house with her dad asleep in the recliner. She would get a blanket, place it over our laps, and tease my dick. I'd unzip her pants and finger her. She got off on being naughty that close to her father. Later, we were trusted to go to the basement to watch their new TV VCR. An invitation to come over and watch a movie was a signal that she wanted to have sex. On the couch, jeans around my knees, her rocking on my dick with a blanket over our laps in case her mom came down with refreshments. It was a perfect situation. Young, hung, and full of cum, and a hot girlfriend who liked to have sex. Then it happened. A pregnancy. After breaking the news to our parents, there was much yelling, shaming, and crying. Our parents agreed on us getting married quickly. We both wanted to move away from our parents and be free. The pregnancy was a false alarm, but we were married and were going to try to make a go of it. Life was good. We had sex morning, noon, and night. We had a nice little apartment, and her dad helped me land an okay job. She still worked at his law office. Not really worked. She got a check but kinda went in when she wanted. I was truly trying to apply myself to my job and my marriage. I didn't want to end up in an unhappy marriage like my parents. But that meant less going out and spending money. Kay didn't like that part of responsibility. She would occasionally go out with girlfriends for lunch or a drink. The nights out became more frequent. Kay would go out with her friend Sally to a music club or some girls' night at a bar, and they were almost always drunk and late. Note, this was 1979, only payphones and landlines. Often with some half-assed excuse. She would get playful and try to explain the lateness. You know I like to flirt, but I'll always come home to you. I was so blindly in love I trusted her. One of those late nights I heard Kay and Sally come in, bumping into things and giggling. I couldn't hear much, just drunken babble. Sally was talking about all the hot guys hitting on them. And that babble-frabble, you disappeared. Babble, was it fun? Kay shushed her and mumbled, did anyone see us sneak backstage? They laughed and giggled. After Sally left, Kay quietly came into the bedroom, peeled off her jeans and top, and got in bed. Did you have a good time? Is all I said, reaching over to rub her butt, inching down her panties, hoping for some good old drunken sex. She quickly stopped me and said, no, wait, sorry, too drunk. Can't. She jumped up to the bathroom to hurl. The next day I came home for a sandwich at lunch to see how Kay's hangover was. She was up and rushing out the door. She looked great, with a high ponytail and her tight jeans and some band t-shirt. She seemed surprised and said, Dad needs my help at his office. I'll be back by dinner. Love you. She kissed me and hurried to her car. It wasn't too unusual for her to help at her dad's law office. She had gone in a few times to help with a new employee. Late that afternoon, I heard Kay come in the back and yell, hi, hun, gotta take a shower, Dot. It was dirtier than we thought. Kay was being extra bubbly and entered in a towel. Sitting beside me, I noticed a mirror and lines of coke. Where did you get this? As I reached for the straw, I snorted a line. It was good. Where did you get the primo coke? Kay said, a friend. Before I could inquire who, Kay offered me a second line. Kay playfully said, let's just stay in tonight. She leaned back and opened her towel, and watch a movie like we used to. We had a great night of energetic sex all over the apartment. The next day was a Saturday. Planning on sleeping in, I heard a phone call. Kay was saying, yes, giggle, sure I can, where? And a little laugh. She rushed around and threw on a cute sundress. Kay talked as she put on a little makeup. Sally needs a lift. She's stranded and, needs a ride. Grabbing her keys, Kay came close to the bed and kissed me. I playfully reached up her dress, realizing that she didn't have on panties. What the? She kissed me and said, I'm in a hurry. Hun, it doesn't matter. It's just Sally. She wiped her wet finger on the Coke mirror from last night and rubbed her gums. Go ahead and finish this. I can get more. She smiled and headed out the door. I did a wake-up line of Coke, thinking, I'll bet some poor horn dog is trying to fuck Sally giving her Coke, and she's sharing with Kay lol. Win-win. Maybe a month later, I was out getting pizza. I returned with Kay hanging up the phone. Sally was coming by any minute to pick her up. She wanted Kay to go with her to see a band downtown. I offered to go along, and Kay said, No, it's just us girls. I know of a party Saturday. Kissing me, she headed to Sally's car. I'll call if Sally gets too drunk, promise. They both laughed and drove off. It was around 2:45 a.m., and I was getting concerned about Kay. I called Sally's to check. After several rings, the phone was knocked off the cradle. I heard music and moaning. I yelled into the phone, "Sally or Kay, are you there? Pick up!" I heard grunting and a muffled girl's voice. I yelled again, "Pick up, is Kay there?" A guy picked up the phone. "Dude, Kay's not here." I heard grunting and gagging noises. "Sally can't talk now. LOL, Kay got a ride." I thought I heard another guy say, "Ha, she's getting a ride all right." And the phone went dead. I was furious that Sally had left her at the club. Grabbing my keys, I drove to the venue. As I was pulling into the parking lot, I saw Kay. I was frozen at the sight of some dude's hand on her ass as they got in the side door of an old Econoline van. I was absolutely frozen with shock. I have a bad temper, and it paired with the stark realization I just couldn't move. I was simply frozen. It was like a punch in the gut, like a bad dream. Should I go bang on the van and punch the guy or grab her? And the van started rocking a bit, and someone got in the driver's seat, and they sped off. I sat in astonishment. What just happened? How could she? I drove home in tears, pacing around the apartment, remembering the times I was such a fool, the time I came home at lunch. There was a car in the drive, so I parked on the street. As I got to the door, a young guy rushed out. "Hello, sir," is all he said as he hurried to his car. The smell of loud teen cologne in the air. Walking in, I called Kay. She yelled from the shower, "What are you doing home?" Walking into the bedroom, I saw the sheets a mess and again smelled that cologne. I heard the shower stop and she said, "Sorry, hun. I slept late. Did you see Billy, the new courier for Dad's office? He was dropping off something I needed." I looked and saw a stack of papers on the nightstand. Kay came into the room wrapped in a small towel, and I forgot all about Billy. Or the time she would call from Sally's, saying how drunk she was and didn't want to drive. I was mad at her, and myself. It wasn't as much the sex, but the lies. The cheating fucking lies. How many guys had fucked her and told others? How many knew she was a fucking slut who couldn't say no? I tried to go to bed knowing it was over, no more. Our bedroom had a window to the street, so around 3:45 a.m., that van pulled up. I couldn't see well, but they sat there for a moment, and a giggling Kay staggered to the door. She came in, banging into things, and entered the bedroom. I kept quiet as she stripped off her jeans and top and lay face down. Gritting my teeth, all I said was, "Did you have a good time?" She mumbled, "Yeah, good band. Had to wait on Sally." I rubbed her butt, easing my hand to her pussy. She quickly stopped me. "Sorry, hun. I'm way too drunk." But before she stopped me, I felt how wet her panties were. Holding my anger, I slapped her ass hard and said, "You weren't too drunk to fuck van guy, were you?" She turned and said, What do you mean?" I sat up and continued, "I saw you and that guy get into that van. The same van that just dropped you off like a cheap whore. A fucking tramp that they fucking drop off. How many of our friends know what a fucking slut you are? How many know I'm a fool and don't realize it?" Kay sat up crying. Normally my weak point, but not tonight. She pleaded, "No, it's not like that." I said, "What is it then? Some big dick motherfucker? Don't I please you?" Still crying, Kay said, "No, it's not that." Looking down, she admitted, "I love you, and you always please me but it, quote, s just sometimes. I enjoy the variety. Different men's attention makes me feel special. I love you and only you, but..." I cut her off by saying, "I'm leaving. I'm not going to be made a fool. You can suck and fuck anyone. Have all the fucking variety you want." The morning sun was coming up as she pleaded, "Please don't go. I'll change. No more lies. I promise." I finally gave in, making her promise not to go out and drink as much, to stay home with me, and no more lies. She lay back on the bed and said, "I promise." Things did get better. We would entertain friends and couples. I had tried being faithful the first year, but two can play that game. During the week, we were a happy married couple, but when we went out, it was more like roommates. The first one back at the apartment got the master bedroom, the other got the guest room. It was a stag vixen type of open marriage. Sounds great, right? But not for long. Our marriage ended a year later, and that could be another story. Looking back, the hurt and betrayal were always there, simmering under the surface. Kay and I tried to make it work, but the trust was gone. Our relationship had turned into something unrecognizable, a shadow of what it once was. The nights filled with passionate lovemaking were replaced by silent resentment and unspoken accusations. We tried counseling, but it only revealed the deep chasms that had formed between us. I couldn't forget the lies, the deceit, and the countless nights I spent wondering where she was and who she was with. The final straw came one night when I caught her sneaking back into the apartment, her clothes disheveled, the smell of another man's cologne clinging to her skin. I confronted her, and this time there were no tears, no promises of change. She simply looked at me, and in that moment, I knew it was over. We filed for divorce shortly after. The love we once shared had been buried under a mountain of lies and infidelities. Years later, I've moved on and found someone who respects and loves me for who I am. The scars from my time with Kay have faded, but they are still a reminder of a tumultuous period in my life. I sometimes wonder what became of her and whether she ever found the happiness she was so desperately seeking. As for me, I learned a lot from those years. I learned about trust, about the importance of honesty, and about the kind of love that endures beyond physical attraction. And while I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, it shaped me into the person I am today, stronger and more resilient, with a clearer understanding of what it means to truly love and be loved.